We are going live. Livity live. We are live. This is This Week in Science, and we are back. We are here today. We are here. We're going to talk about the science. Justin is putting up the 1 more second finger again. Oh, wait a minute. What? What do you mean an unknown error occurred?
Oh, no.
Everything is under control.
It's under control.
Everything is under control.
Everything is just fine. Everything's okay. Everyone, if you are watching this video right now, then you are watching the live broadcast of the This Week in Science podcast, in which we're doing all the things, all the talking, and sometimes our computers don't work, and sometimes I have to edit things out for the actual podcast. So this is where all of the dirty laundry gets aired. You're watching that now. Hey, Blair and Justin, are you ready to do a show?
Yeah. My dog just
I
caused
thought we were
a
going to
bunch
talk
of
about
stuff
our
to
dirty
fall
laundry.
over and go bang, but everything's fine now. So
Everything's
I'm
fine.
ready.
I fall over and go bang sometimes too.
Don't we all?
Okay, let's start this show. We'll get it on the road in a 3, a 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 780. Is it 83 or is it 84? Hold on. Last week was 83. Why did I put 83 in my thing today? It's 84.
It was a good show last week. I'd
Was-
keep that show going.
I thought, Justin, I thought you were saying, like, yeah, that was a good show. We're done for the night.
We're done. Good job,
Did
Kiki.
it.
Okay, starting the show again. That's getting edited out in 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 784, recorded on Wednesday, July 29th, 2020. How to know a narcissist. Hi there. I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on This Week in Science, we will fill your head with mosquito bites, poop, and Vikings. But first,
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. The world is a really big place. Wherever you go, the longer you are gone, the stronger the longing is to go home again. As a little girl with a dog once said, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. And yet, in the aftermath of a pandemic stay-at-home orders, many are clicking their heels in hopes of being able to go any place but home, any place but home, any place but home. But as long as flying monkeys and virulent viruses are still in the air, we must stay put until the epidemic passes. Meanwhile, we treat you to an assortment of interesting discoveries found behind the curtain of This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I wanna learn everything. I wanna fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I wanna know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
and a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back to fill your head with science. We are back to discuss discoveries, to be curious, to be cantankerous, maybe, I don't know, or just plain nice and have an enjoyable time. I hope you enjoy the show today. Tonight, I have stories about Alzheimer's, blood. I have a story about narcissists, and I would like to talk to you about poop.
Always a fascinating topic.
Always. Justin, what do you have?
I have a 100-million-year-old life form, mysterious magnetars, Viking viruses, and microbiomes versus malnutrition.
Ooh, that would be interesting. Very interesting. And Blair, what is in the animal corner?
I have mosquitoes and thumbs And then I have a couple of quick stories about AI and dogs.
I'm just thinking those thumbs are really great for smashing mosquitoes.
Yeah. Or
Yes.
mosquitoes might
Smash.
really like to bite them.
No,
Vascularized.
no. Stay away from my thumbs. Mosquitoes, I need those for doing things. All right. Are we ready to dive into the show? If you are ready to dive into the show, yes. Well, let me remind you first that you can subscribe to This Week in Science on YouTube, on Facebook, and on just about every podcast platform there is out there. Look for This Week in Science. You can also visit our website at twis.org, twis.org. But now, yes, it's time for the science. Hot off the presses. Are you ready? NASA's heading back to Mars with the Perseverance rover and its hitchhiking helicopter called Ingenuity. Tomorrow, hopefully. Its launch window is between 7:50 to 9:50 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, Thursday, July 30th, 2020. And so if you are on the West Coast, that's fairly early in the morning. But if you're up for the launch, hopefully everything will go well and it will be on its way to the Red Planet to arrive February 18th, 2021. So it's going to be a long trip between Earth to Mars, but fingers crossed that everything goes well, that the weather is beautiful, and that it's able to launch. If you remember our interview with NASA JPL geologist Fred Califf, Mapperwalkie on Twitter, he told us about the Perseverance rover and how it's going to poop out little samples and leave them on the surface of Mars for a future mission to come pick up and return them to Earth.
I really like the idea of perseverance, ingenuity, and curiosity all being there, because those are like the three, like you always are asked in a job interview, what are three adjectives to describe yourself as an employee? Oh,
Perseverance, ingenuity, and curiosity.
Yeah.
And then now people who are doing the hiring, they can say, oh, you're just like the Mars rovers.
Uh-huh.
The little rovers that could. Yes. It'll be very exciting.
Be more like a Mars rover. There you go.
And seriously, I mean, be well engineered to persist and not break down and be able to outlast your predicted mission end date. I mean, that's what the Mars rovers that we make seem to do.
And if something doesn't work, just smack it with a shovel. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yep. Totally fine. Hey, Justin, tell me about those 100-million-year-old microbes.
Oh, you just ruined it. That was the story. That's
no.
it. That's 100-million-year-old microbes.
That's not
Okay,
the
so
whole
it's my
story.
turn now, right? No.
Yeah, are we jumping forward? No, what's the story?
So yeah, 100 million years ago, the moon went around the Earth, dinosaurs roamed the land, fish swam in the seas, and microbes were everywhere. It's just outside of dinosaurs, pretty much the way things are today. But for less than 100 years, humans have been collecting sediment samples under the ocean. These samples are collected to help us understand how the climate has changed over time. It is to monitor the nefarious activities of plate tectonics, as well as help us study the ecosystem of life forms at the bottom of the ocean. Apparently, these samples can also come alive. This is published in Nature Communications. Researchers reveal that given the right food and the right conditions in the laboratory, microbes collected from sediments as old as 100 million years were revived and multiplied, despite being dormant since the age of the dinosaurs. They used a drill ship to collect numerous sediment cores 100 meters deep into the seafloor from the South Pacific Gyres. This is a part of the ocean with the lowest productivity, least nutrients available to fuel any sort of a food web. They've discovered that oxygen was present in all of the cores, suggesting that if sediment accumulates slowly on the seafloor at a rate no more than a meter or two every million years, oxygen will penetrate all the way down from the seafloor down to the basement. So all the dirt to the bottom of the ocean until you hit bedrock, I guess, will have some oxygen in it. So these conditions make it possible for aerobic microorganisms, those that require oxygen, to survive at these insane timescales of millions of years. This is with their they fine-tuned some laboratory procedures, which doesn't go into here, but scientists led by Yuki Murano of the Japan Agency for Marine Earth Science and Technology, also known as Jams Tech, which happens to be my old DJ name.
Jams Tech, DJ Jams Tech. Yes.
Yeah. So they incubated the samples and got them to grow, demonstrating that these weren't just fossilized remains of microbes, but actually still alive, capable of growing, dividing. Morano was initially says he was taken aback by the results. Quotey voice of Morano. At first, I was skeptical, but we found that up to 99.1% of the microbes in sediment deposited 101.5 million years ago were still alive and were ready to eat. They didn't eat the microbes. The microbes themselves were hungry. That's what I think.
They were ready. The microbes were ready.
Could be
to
wrong,
eat.
but I do believe he means that the microbes were. The newly developed ability to grow, manipulate, and characterize ancient microorganisms. With this research team is now looking forward to applying a similar approach to other questions about the geological past. According to Morano, life for microbes on the subsea floor is very slow compared to life above it. And so with that slow speed, evolutionary speed of these microbes is also going to be slower. He says, we want to understand how or if these ancient microbes evolved. This study shows that the subsea floor is an excellent location to explore the limits of life on Earth. I find it interesting is that this is if they have barely evolved in 100 million years, that's an amazing snapshot of 100 million year old microbial life. Granted, at the seafloor, and maybe these only related to other microbes that you will find in the seafloor, but it's still an amazing snapshot. Like any sort of a life form that has barely evolved and still stayed alive for this 100 million year time, really it would be interesting to study.
I think it gets at that the question of what is the minimal amount of metabolism that's required to maintain life. So to keep it in this hibernating state, maybe, or this very low energy use state, what allows these organisms to do that? And can we take any of those lessons and apply them to us? Do they scale up to larger organisms, or is this just this organism is so simple that it really doesn't need much to be maintained?
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, really interesting questions. Yeah, I was wondering also about this, whether they're really sure that their samples weren't contaminated and that these really are really old organisms, bacteria that they're growing, and they're not just like, oops, we got something on the drill and that contaminated our samples. I would hope that they tried to avoid that, but it's a question.
I'm sure that they didn't publish without at least swabbing a drill. Just compare.
I hope. You can always hope.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, Blair, what you got there?
Oh, just an update on service dogs for people with PTSD and what services they are actually rendering. So we know that in general, there are large tests that have been done to find that service dogs are helpful to people with PTSD. But do we know if it's service dogs in particular or just having a dog in general, and what exactly are they doing? So this study does show, this is from Purdue University, that using and benefiting the specific trained tasks that service dogs are given set them apart from pet dogs or emotional support dogs. They are doing something very different. And what specific task is used the most often, and which is the most helpful with problems with PTSD, is actually the task of disrupting episodes of anxiety. So on average, the dogs trained, they both alerted the veteran to increasing anxiety and provided physical contact during anxiety episodes that interrupted it. And so they were mainly helping interrupt or prevent these anxiety episodes.
And the dogs are trained to recognize those better than just a pet dog.
Right. And respond to them in a very specific way. Yeah, absolutely. And so they do other things, like they help with nightmares. They are hyper aware in public, apparently a big thing. If you have PTSD, is feeling nervous in crowds or in public spaces. And so dogs will actually look the opposite direction that you're looking. So it kind of feels like you have somebody is looking behind you. So you have all of your
interesting.
Your areas covered. Nobody's going to sneak up behind you.
Right.
And they help with risk taking. They help with amnesia issues. But this number one thing was preventing anxiety and disrupting anxiety episodes.
That's fantastic. I mean, I know pets in general can be good for calming people.
Like blood pressure and stuff like that. Yeah.
And can help just generally with those levels, but it's really interesting to know that dogs that are trained specifically for this they are helping. They have a benefit, and the things that they do, they matter.
Yeah, that's just, I mean, it's obvious once you've heard it that they've been trained this way. But it's brilliant to train a dog to sense your anxiety and then want pets.
Right.
That's all it takes. And then you're being the reassuring one, and you've got your best friend by you there. That's perfect.
Or it can be as simple as providing intense physical contact, like leaning up against you and putting their head in your lap.
Yeah.
So that can be really helpful. But I think, so this is really important just to know the benefit of service dogs, but it once again highlights the difference between pets and emotional support animals and service animals, and being very clear about that, because the second that kind of line becomes blurred, it can prevent people from bringing real legitimate service animals into spaces, because people are bringing pets into those spaces and abusing those rules. So that is an important thing to remember here as well. They're providing real service.
Isn't that basically in the same category of getting into a wheelchair to go to like a sporting event to get a better seat? Like, I mean, isn't it like that's just wrong people, and you can't really.
You're cheating the system. You're using. You're finding loopholes in the system.
I want to bring my dog with me versus my dog prevents anxiety attacks. Those are two completely different things.
It's parking in a handicap spot with somebody else's placard.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like dirty. It's not. Yeah. It's just bad. Gary in the chat room says even cats is with a cat. I feel like a cat would just like escalate anxiety. Like you'd get anxious and the cat would be like, meow, meow.
What do we know about that?
It's not reassuring, cat. Please leave me alone.
To my knowledge, cats have not been trained to prevent complications from PTSD or
they have
symptoms.
not.
So
they don't care. They just don't care about
Cats are a little harder to train.
They just don't, because they don't care about you.
That's not true, but we won't get into that debate right now. Something else that's reassuring is a new possible test for Alzheimer's that's being developed. A study that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, this week suggests that a simple blood test could predict Alzheimer's disease as much as 20 years before the onset of disease. That it finds the marker in the blood up to 20 years ahead of actual symptoms.
Wow.
The test would measure levels of one of the tau proteins that's commonly found in Alzheimer's brain tangles. It's called phosphotau 217 or p-tau 217. And while this is not yet ready for clinical use, the tests that they have done so far, looking at different groups of people in places in Sweden, in I believe Arizona and Colombia, The researchers are optimistic from the results they've had so far that they're going to be able to make it ready for use in a couple of years. So especially if you have genetically a genetic predisposition, a familial predisposition for Alzheimer's disease, a test like this could be really great for letting you know where you are kind of in the before symptoms occur. And if what we know so far about treatment is the earlier you start treatment, the longer you can keep the tangles from really taking form in the brain. And so it keeps the major symptoms from really kicking in until much later in the disease. And so if you catch it early, you can prevent it.
That's what I was going to say is...
My first question, too, is can they do anything with that information? Yeah. Or is it just like knowledge hanging over your head?
Yeah, if they would just said, you're going to get Alzheimer's in 20 years, I'm not sure I'd want to know.
Right. I don't really need to know that right now. Thanks a lot.
2 years or just a couple months before it really starts to happen. Don't tell me.
Yeah, well, because also then you know, well, you get a thing like that hanging over your head, and now I just forgot my car keys again. Forgot where I put them again. Is that Alzheimer's, or is that just forgetting where you put your keys?
It's just your brain slowing down as you get older, right?
No,
too many things to pay attention to. Your brain isn't paying attention to where you put your keys.
Yeah, I think I did that more than when I was young than I do when I'm old. Well, I got a hook now that I put. But anyway, that's not the point. But the idea is you'd be second guessing. Like, is this just a normal thing that happened, or is this disease now happening? And it'd be like too much to know if there wasn't a reason like treating it.
There's a reason, yes. Treating it, the earlier you catch it, the better the prognosis for longer. Speaking of death. No.
Yes.
Do you have a Death Star? What?
Death Star Magnetar. Mystery of the universe has been solved. At least one of the mysteries has been witnessed. Okay, so this is fast radio bursts. They're one of astronomy's sort of unsolved questions about the universe because they were discovered back in 2007. But these are quick pulses in radio waves just for a few milliseconds, and then they fade away. And they're only rarely, if ever, seen again from the same location. Their nature doesn't really, it's not understood where they're coming from. We have not observed any in the Milky Way with a known origin or emitting in any other kind of radiation beyond just radio wave. It's just, bam, we get these fast radio waves. They're just there, blip, and then that's it. We don't know where it comes from. There's a global collaboration of telescopes, though, that has detected a unique mix of radiation bursting from a dead star in our galaxy. It's coming from inside the galaxy. Something has never actually been seen before from this type of star, which may be solving this mystery. So the finding actually involves two kinds of cosmic phenomena, magnetars and fast radio bursts. The magnetars are these stellar remnants. These have some of the most intense magnetic fields found anywhere in the universe. When they become active, they can produce these extremely short bursts of high energy radiation that last for less than a second, but are 1 billion times more luminous than our sun. 1 billion suns, and it's gone. It's just like that. So this is late April. SGR 1935 plus 2154 is a magnetar discovered 6 years ago. And finally, it had its big X-ray burst, and so we started looking at it. It became active again. Soon after, astronomers spied something astonishing. This magnetar was not only radiating those usual X-rays, but radio waves as well. This is the first time we've seen the thing of this pinpointed a location. Aha, that is what's emitting radio waves. We detected the magnetar's burst of high energy, hard X-rays on the 28th of April, says Sandro Marighetti of the National Institute of Astrophysics in Milan, Italy. She's the lead author on one of the studies that's at least being done about this. They have this integral space telescope. I think it's a European Space Agency space telescope. It has a burst alert system. So it catches these rays coming through. It immediately alerts observatories worldwide. So it says, aha, signal, everybody look. And it also can pinpoint directionally where those other telescopes should look. So astronomers on the ground spotted a short and extremely bright burst of radio waves from that direction using the Chime radio telescope in Canada over the same time frame. Also, this was independently confirmed a few hours later by the Survey for Transient Astronomical Radio Emissions, or STARE-2, in the United States. This is Sandro again. We've never seen a burst of radio waves resembling a fast radio burst from a magnetar before. This is the first ever observational connection between magnetars and fast radio bursts. It truly is a major discovery and helps to bring the origin of these mysterious phenomena into focus. Connection strongly supports the idea that these fast radio bursts emit from magnetars, dead stars, throughout the universe. Demonstrates that these bursts from these highly magnetized objects can also be spotted at radio wavelengths. So, yeah. Very cool. I like how she says that too. She just throws a little pun in there.
Yeah.
Bringing
Puns are
mysterious
always
phenomena
appreciated.
into focus. I like it.
Ha 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 ha. Yeah, that's cool. Very, very cool. Blair, what's your next story?
Oh, it's about AI used for birding.
Because birding is not just for people anymore.
No, it's for computers now.
What?
This new research demonstrates for the first time that artificial intelligence could be used to train computers to recognize individual birds. Something humans pretty much can't do unless they have some sort of discerning characteristics.
Unless they've been listening for a while.
If you get to know certain individuals for a long period of time, I know that's why Kiki's making.
Oh, you mean individual birds with the same?
Yeah, you can tell individual birds. But
I thought you meant like different bird calls, but no, you're talking about like this blue jay from that blue jay from that blue jay from that blue jay.
Alan
Oh my
from
goodness.
Steve from Corey from John. Yeah. So
Oh my
basically,
goodness.
this one you're just supposed to like after one or two exposures to a bird, identify that bird and be able to tell that bird from now on. So this is actually, they showed that computers can consistently recognize dozens of individual birds, even though we could not tell them apart. Humans couldn't do it in the same test. In doing so, the study provided a means of overcoming one of the greatest limitations of the study of wild birds, reliably recognizing individuals. And so this is an automatic and non-invasive identification. Usually when we think about birding, we think about banded birds. A bird has to be caught to put an identifier on them. So this is a non-invasive identification that for animals that are completely unmarked and unmanipulated. And so this is a way to be able to monitor bird populations and individuals completely remotely without having to touch them.
What was? Do you guys remember this? Do you remember this? There was somebody who was that we had on our show that was going to put bird listening stations like all over at random. Like you could get one and put it up in your backyard and tie it to the internet, and it would listen for bird calls and feed back that data. It sounds like that would be a pretty cool matchup. So anybody could grab, you put up your birdhouse, but you also put up a little bird mic. You got a little bird mic in the backyard.
Well, in this case, you could put a little bird webcam.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very fun to be able to, you could have access to your own webcam, your live cam of birds, and then the AI would have access to it as well.
Yeah, you know, I just realized though, this is coming for us. Also,
it is.
Technology.
If it already is here.
I mean,
facial recognition technology. Yeah. It's totally a thing with
facial recognition is done. This is bird recognition is much harder so far for AI. AI has been trained for human faces from day one.
Yeah, we've been helping AI
actually
get that skill. We're like, hey, I'm tagging my friend in this picture on Facebook. I just told Facebook what my friend looks like. You know, we. But also,
amazingly. Because of who programs it and who most utilizes it and who's most played with this, it's much better at white male, secondly, white female faces than any other ethnicity.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah, which
back
is
to the bird aspect though.
Yeah.
Being able to ID birds without ever touching them is a potential. That's a potential game changer for researchers who are trying to study birds. It doesn't impact the bird's behavior because getting mist netted, and when you try and be as kind as possible to those birds as you get them out of the nets, but sometimes they're tangled in there and you have to work really hard to be able to, it's a stressful procedure for everyone involved.
Not to mention if you're catching a bird on migration, as people often do, if you are causing them stress, that might impact their migration ultimately. We hope that it doesn't, but if we don't have to have their adrenaline spike because they got caught for a second, that might be better for them on their long trip.
Yeah, and how does being caught and banded, how does that affect survival in general for animals?
Did it delay them? Did it separate them from their cohort? We don't know.
Did being stressed out keep them from realizing there actually was a predator around, and so Bob got eaten?
So here's the really exciting part. We can answer the question that everybody has wanted to have answered for the longest time. Can birds actually sense earthquakes? So if we have all these listening stations, these individual birds, and then you like tune into the ones that were the AI is watching, and then the earthquake hits. Were the birds like, hey, you feel a little off today? Are they like tweeting a little anxious?
Are they tweeting differently? Right?
Yeah. Are they
acting a little more skittish?
Anxiety. Yeah. Or they're just like, what was that? Oh well, I can fly. No, I was flying at the time. I didn't feel it. What? Did I miss another earthquake? Every time it happens, I'm flying. Never felt one. But I just, and it could it'd be really cool if it was like advanced enough so you could like pick a bird, and then just track it. Like you can watch this, see how this bird's mood and interactions have gone over weeks or months or a year.
Yeah, I wonder more about how they are going to tell apart identical twins. I mean, I've seen those double yolk chicken eggs. What's up with that?
So you don't think there's a little nurture involved in bird calling?
No, just telling
find
them.
out.
Well, Justin, this is all visual.
This is visual. We're not talking. You're the one who brought up the bird calls.
You brought up the bird.
Oh no, I thought they were identifying by bird call.
No.
Oh no, this is just by how they look.
By how they look, recognizing individuals. Like that little bird's face is different from that little bird's face.
It's not as cool. If they could,
I disagree.
If they could identify them by bird call, that would be more impressive.
To Justin's point about nature versus nurture, I do think that as long as they're not brand new baby chicks, they should have some sort of discernible marks, even if they are twins. If it's a scratch on the leg or whatever it is, the AI should, in theory, catch that.
Yeah. Speaking of individuals, have you ever worked with that person who just never seems to learn from their mistakes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, guess what? They're a narcissist. A study out of Oregon State University found that narcissists they fail to learn from their mistakes because they refuse to acknowledge that they ever even made a mistake in the first place. Yes. So most people do what's called counterfactual thinking. This is the process of imagining a different outcome from what actually occurred and trying to figure out, okay, this thing didn't happen. How could I have gone back and done it differently? The researchers, however, in this study, they determined that narcissists don't do that. So what narcissists end up doing is that they are more likely to, in hindsight, if they got something right, feel that it was actually more foreseeable. So like, I knew it all along. Of course I was right. And when they predicted outcomes incorrectly, they felt the outcome, or people who weren't narcissists felt the outcome, or People who were narcissists felt the outcome was less foreseeable. So if you're a narcissist, your reaction to something is, oh, nobody could have guessed that would happen.
Nobody's ever
Oh,
seen
this sounds
numbers like this
familiar.
before?
Nobody's seen numbers like this before.
Oh.
That's right. So and this was published in the Journal of Management. They say that narcissists often rise within ranks of organizations because they exude total confidence, take credit for the successes of others, and deflect blame from themselves when something goes wrong. This can be damaging to organizations or countries because of low morale of employees who work for the narcissist, and because the narcissist never learns from their mistakes and continues to make poor decisions. So, yes. Anyway, how to know a narcissist. They shirk responsibility, never taking responsibility for the poor outcomes of their decisions, never saying that they actually made a mistake.
And they can't say these things. It is constant. There's a constant drive to maintain that image of themselves.
Yes.
They will attack others. They will defend it. They will make up. They will lie. They will do whatever it takes to maintain a narrative for themselves.
Of themselves as amazing, the winner, on top. Yes. Anyway, if you just tuned in, this is This Week in Science. Are you interested in a TWIS shirt or mug or face mask or other item of our TWISy merchandise? You can find that in our Zazzle store. Go to twis.org and click on the Zazzle link. You'll find all sorts of neat products that will help support TWIS. All right. Do. Time for the COVID update. COVID update. I stay up late because I can't sleep anymore.
Boo.
No. All right. This week we've got some really interesting stories. There's a COVID origin story now. An international team of researchers reconstructed the evolutionary history of SARS-CoV-2 and determined that this viral lineage has been circulating in bats for decades, since at least the 1960s.
Wow.
The researchers see no need for a pangolin intermediary, although the spike protein might be adapted to infect both human and pangolin respiratory cells. They also found no evidence of lab origin or accidental release from a laboratory.
Well, when I say, how do they know that? No accidental release.
That there are signs genetically of laboratory genetic manipulation that would have been there.
Manipulation is one thing, but a sample. I mean, this is the thing, and I hate to fuel any conspiracy theory out there anywhere.
You are.
But there's no such thing as a secure biological facility. They just don't exist. Like the head of the only person I ever met who was who I met in person and talked to, who used to be the head of the biology department at UC Davis when they were proposing building a, what is it, like a level 4 or 5 biolab, biocontainment facility. He was like, "There's no such thing." He was just point blank. He's like, "I'm against it. I'd love to do that research in one, but I'm telling you, those things, there's no such thing. Especially if you're talking about viruses, there's no such thing as containable." Even so, if with all the strict regulations that I know we try to put in place in the United States, I'm not saying China's lax on regulations, but they're lax on regulations. I mean, I don't know that it would matter that they would sample the bat and it got out if it was already going to be able to infect people. I think it's more likely that you would interact with it where people are cutting up live bats and putting them next to other animals. And I think the wet market still makes way more sense.
The most sense, yeah.
But escape from a lab is also possible.
So if I may,
that's a very possible thing.
I don't know the backstory.
I mean, if Kurt Russell could escape from New York.
I don't know the backstory of how they ruled it out, but I would hypothesize that perhaps this wasn't in a lab before. That's the point, is that if this wasn't a lab origin, then therefore that means it wasn't cultivated in a lab before the outbreak, and therefore it would not have been something that started there. I would guess that that's what that's about.
I think they probably look at markers of mutation and like time since it would have split from its next closest phylogenetically related.
Those shouldn't show up that fast. But what they were talking about, I think, is like intentional manipulation to make a more, because that's what the conspiracy thing is. Somebody like put this together in a lab with this other virus to make it worse.
They did not find any evidence of that.
No, and I think one of the lead doctors who was one of the first people coming out about this thing may have been associated with the lab. I'm just saying, either way, it got out, but I don't think intentionally anything. People study these things, and lab security, not from nefarious groups, but just lab security in terms of like not contaminating yourself, your coworkers, and then taking something outside on your shoes. It's a lot harder than people might think.
Yeah, we'll see. Oh, back to school season is upon us. I know some schools have already gotten started again, distance learning in places around the country. But as it's starting again, many are wondering whether closing schools in response to the pandemic was a good idea in the first place. Right? Was it a good idea?
Yes,
well, well, you say that, but some people are like, what if kids don't spread it and if it's not a big deal?
Do.
And yes,
it is a big deal.
Yes, it is a big deal. We understand this, but some people have been debating it, and it is an issue, and it's a topic that's brought up a lot. I've seen people bring it up a lot on social media. And the question of how many lives does keeping kids out of school actually save? And there's a new analysis in JAMA this week that suggests, yes, it was a very good idea, and that closing schools was actually associated with a significant decrease in not just number of deaths, but also incidence. They found that there was a decline in incidence of about 62%, so that if the schools had stayed open, there would have been 62% more incidence of cases, possibly, and that and then 58% for mortality. And in the model, they found that it was associated with 128.7 fewer cases per 100,000 people in a population over 26 days, and 1.5 fewer deaths per 100,000 people in a population over 16 days. So that can be calculated out based on different areas and how many people would have died in different population areas. But yes, school closings kept people alive and healthier.
This reminds me of a lot of the climate change conversations that we have, where like, if we do what we're supposed to do and the temperature doesn't rise as much, then people will be like, see, it didn't go as high. You said it was going to go higher. It's like, well, actually, because we did the right thing. This is like that, right? So we closed the schools, kids didn't get sick and die. So see, there was no problem.
No problem at all.
Well, in attempting to reopen the schools, they went like, look, Denmark and Germany have reopened their schools. Yeah, they also did a 90% shutdown of society and have universal health care. So they had and tested. So like they had like all the
testing.
Things.
Yeah.
They had all the things that we didn't do that's allowing their societies to reopen. 3 weeks, that's all we need. 99% of us shut down for 3 weeks. It'll be fine. We can do it.
We could totally
and it'd be over. It'd be done.
Wouldn't that be
We're
great?
done with this. But yeah, like wherever these locations are people who keep arguing for kids to go back to school or doing business as usual. I feel like going up to them and saying, "Have you ever been right? Have you ever been consistently right about anything?" Don't stop talking. Stop offering your opinion. You've not been right.
We've had
any consistency over time. About anything.
You think these thoughts and you want to say these things to people, but it's not going to help if you do. It's not.
Why?
It'll just make people angry and defensive.
They're already insane. What I mean, like, no, like, what's the, like, people are like, oh, no, we got to let them keep speaking their drivel and nonsense. No, we don't. You're wrong.
Yeah.
You're wrong. I will shout it to them. You're wrong. Like, maybe nobody's shouting it at them loud enough, and that's the problem. Somebody else is shouting at them. Yeah. Somebody else is shouting in their ear. There's no problem. There's no global warming. And they're listening to that. So we need to start shouting at these people. That's the problem. NPR. Well, I'm sorry. The NPR voice. The NPR voice is not getting through to these people.
We have to change tactics. But maybe we could tell them. Maybe we could tell them what the CDC reported this week, that even among young adults aged 18 to 34 years with no chronic medical conditions, so nothing that would make them get really sick, right? Not one of the people with pre-existing conditions. These are young, healthy people. Nearly 1 in 5 reported that they had not returned to their usual state of health 14 to 21 days after testing for COVID. So after being tested positive, it was still 2 to 3 weeks after that people, young, healthy people, were still feeling the effects of this disease. Compare that to the flu, which is under 2 weeks to go through the entire thing normally. People who are young and healthy with no medical conditions, you get the flu, you're done with it, you're back to your health in 2 weeks. This is persistent. That is another problem.
This is one of the things that I think, we keep talking about, but the average person maybe still doesn't understand, is that a mild case, a case that does not land you in the hospital, could still have you sick for months.
Yes.
For months. You know what I heard? I heard it can make your hair fall out. I heard that it's been giving psychological issues. I heard it can cause heart infections.
Let me tell you about the heart issues. 2 studies out this week from Germany found evidence of heart damage in COVID patients. The first looked at a sample of people whose average age was 49 years old, so not too elderly.
Not elderly at all.
Not elderly at all.
That's a very young age in some people's book.
And these people recovered at home, so they were not so ill that they stayed in the hospital for their recovery. These are people who had mild to moderate symptoms, recovered at home. Looking at their hearts, they found structural changes similar to what is seen after heart attack in these individuals. There were heart issues persisting after COVID in the sample of people they looked at. The other study looked at people who had died, and so these were autopsy heart tissue from people who were elderly, around 85 years old on average. They found high levels of the virus in the tissues of the heart. So the virus is getting into the cells of the heart and really digging in there and having a really nice time.
Replicating.
Having
little virus babies.
Yes. Not good for us. So.
But do they get out again? I mean, do they really escape? What happens if because in the lungs, I get it. They escape the cells and then you sneeze or cough and then those floating, they get expelled. What do they do when they escape from these cells in the heart?
Oh, maybe they go infect the liver. Maybe they go and get into other tissues in your body. I mean, if they're in the heart, they're circulating in your blood and they're getting everywhere.
I feel like it's almost like the toxoplasma ending up in something other than a cat, though. Like it seems like it's in the wrong place if it's in the heart. I mean, it can do damage, but
it seems like that. But as we talked about on a previous episode, it seems as though the virus gets into the cells and reprograms cells to change structurally to really turn themselves over into replication machines. Yeah. There is a
typical virus shift. Bad behavior.
Yes, but it is it's more extensive than other viruses in the extent that it changes microtubules within the cell. It changes cells. It changes cells what they're producing to more virus, and it changes them structurally as well. So there are all sorts of internal changes that are that we have yet to really understand the downstream effects of. Oh yeah, and this week, if you saw the video, America's Frontline Doctors, that's not group. That's not a thing. They're backed by the Tea Party. There's a video that has gotten millions of views on Facebook and other social media. They stood in front of the White House in white lab coats talking about the importance of their ability to be able to use hydroxychloroquine to treat patients. And they said they had so much evidence that it works. And okay,
Lies? Marketing campaign?
It's a marketing campaign, and I'm not really sure of the reasoning behind it, aside from the possibility of being able to say, come election time, that certain politicians were, wanted to make people healthy, but because the medical establishment wouldn't let him give people hydroxychloroquine, then people died. So it's potentially a marketing campaign that
well, it's also tied into a major donor to that administration. Also operates the company that's making the hydroxy.
But there's another study out this week. It just seems like week after week.
Did this one finally call it a cure?
No, another study in the New England Journal of Medicine found no benefit of hydroxychloroquine when used with or without azithromycin, which is a common combination, on mild to moderate symptom COVID-19 patients compared to standard care.
And now what a waste of time. What a waste of time and effort and energy we have done in disproving something that was being encouraged, that was dangerous for people to take.
Over and over and over.
And there will be no admission of guilt or of being wrong. You're right.
No.
My goodness.
But keep your eyes peeled, everybody, because no one could have known. No one could have known, right? Keep your eyes and ears peeled on social media. Do not just take what you see or hear at face value. Triangulation, being able to find multiple sources that are credible, trusted sources for information is incredibly important. And we hope that you continue to come to This Week in Science to bring you some of that information and to link you to some of those other very credible sources.
Which is especially important if you're somebody like me. I believe everything I read or hear. So I am very selective about the sources that I listen to or read from, because once I read it or hear it, it's in there. I can't get it out.
Nope. And the first thing that's said, if it's misinformation, you're probably going to remember that. It's hard to erase that misinformation, even if you have all the facts in the world. Mm-hmm. This is This Week in Science. I want to say thank you. Thank you for listening to TWIS every week with us. You're the reason that we're able to do what we do, bringing you up to date and down to earth views on science and discoveries. And with your help, we can do even more. We can bring a sane perspective to a world full of misinformation. Head over to twis.org right now. Click on that Patreon link and choose your level of support. Be part of bringing sanity and science to more people.
And we're back. You're listening to This Week in Science. Is that what you're waiting for? Kiki, you want to talk about poop, I guess?
Yeah, I guess it's time to talk about poop. Let's talk about the good things and the bad things that you find in poop, especially how those change as you get old. Last week, we talked about factors in blood from people who exercise that can have beneficial effects on the brain. This week, I have a study out of the Biomedical Central Microbiome Journal that it basically discovered that, well, they didn't discover this, but as people age, there's more bad stuff in their poop, more bad bacteria than good bacteria. And so they looked at taking this feces from elderly people and aged mice and then transferring it to doing fecal transplants on young mice. So they took,
giving the young mice the old poop.
yes. So
Okay.
it was like kind of backwards from what the studies usually are. It was normally it's like, how can we make older people younger? Let's take the young blood. Let's take the young poop. This time it was like, let's see what the old poop does to the young people. Well, it turns out in mice, the bacteria Paenalcaligenes hominis and Escherichia coli, lead to cognitive impairment and colitis in young mice. So when you transfer the feces from these old people and old mice, it actually leads to brain detriments and gut issues.
Well, we know the microbiome's related to the brain, right? So
yes,
that makes sense.
Yeah, not necessarily very, shocking. What the next step that they did is they took the vagal nerve. The vagus is a sympathetic nerve that it has inputs all over the place. It's a major nerve, but it goes down to the heart. It can control your heart rate. There is a branch that goes to the gut, and there are other branches all over the place. It controls your gut digestion. They took that gut vagal nerve branch and they cut it. And they found that for the Paenalcaligenes hominis, that cutting the vagal nerve stopped the cognitive impairment in the young mice. For E. coli, it didn't have any effect. The E. coli they're doing something else. But for the P. hominis bacteria, somehow, and they think it's through what are called extracellular vesicles, which are like little sacs of messenger material, little instructions that bacteria can send to each other. They bud them out and they send them to each other. That these extracellular vesicles that contain information may be getting into the vagus and traveling up the vagal nerve into the brain and then causing the cognitive impairments by infiltration of the hippocampus. They found these extracellular vesicles, evidence of them in the hippocampus before the vagal nerve was cut, but not after it was cut. So
we knew that microbiome was related to the brain, but we didn't know how. And now we have an idea.
Yeah, so that there's the possibility, at least with this one bacterial species, that its products are getting into the nerve that connects the gut to the brain. And that's a track. It's like a racetrack. And they can just boop.
It's an elevator.
Yeah, a little elevator to the brain. And that once they get to the brain, then they can have chemical effects. These vesicles can then fuse with synapses, with extracellular, with receptors on the exterior of neurons and glial cells, and potentially start to have actual effects that lead to the cognitive impairment that's seen. So anyway, older people with the potentially bad guts, your gut microbiome changes as you get older, and it could be this pathway that leads to some of the cognitive declines that are seen with aging. So the question is now, how can I just get rid of all of my bad bacteria and give them to younger people? No, that's not what the question is.
Flush them down.
I want to maintain my advantage over the youth. How can we, without cutting the vagal nerve connection to the gut,
Right, that would
we,
be good.
right? How can we reinforce or block the transmission of these products from the gut to the brain in older people? Yeah. We must control the microbiome.
Yeah, so like what specifically is making it change, and can we stop it? Yeah.
Yeah. And can we stop it? And something else that was interesting about this is that the different bacteria didn't act exactly the same. So E. coli has something else going on. Still has effects, but it is not using the vagus nerve to make it to the brain. Anyway, moving on from that story of the brain to the ears.
Huh?
Yeah, did you hear me there? You hear
What?
me? What? You hear me? I'm going to talk to you here. What if, okay, so people who are hard of hearing or deaf can now use cochlear implants. Cochlear implants use electrical signals to take sound. It gets turned into an electrical signal, and that electrical signal is then through wires connected to the nerves in the ear, and then those nerves are directly stimulated. That's how cochlear implants work. But the problem is there's other stuff in the inner ear that also uses electricity to conduct information. And so in certain environments, hearing gets kind of muddy, and the cochlear implants don't work as well in certain environments because the electrical signals kind of get confused. And so a group of researchers have just published in Science Translational Medicine about cochlear implants that they are developing that take sound and turn it into light instead of into electricity. And in rats, they used genetically modified rats that had the cells in their ears modified to take optogenetic signals. So the blue light from the cochlear implants could then stimulate the nerve cells in the ear, and it allowed the rats to hear. So the sound is converted to light. The light is then converted directly into neural impulses by the nerves that detect the changes in light. Now, to be able to use this in people, we can't just genetically modify people from birth like they did for the rats in this experiment. So that's going to take a bit more work to figure out how to implant it into people. But they're pretty confident they're on a path to be able to develop cochlear implants for people that will give better hearing that are based on light instead of electricity. Yeah, which could be very cool to be able to hear anything to help people sense their environment better.
So this would be an improvement off of what cochlear implants usually do. It would just, the sound would be better.
Yes. So say in environments where there are lots of people and there's a constant sound, instead of the sound being muddy, you would be able to hear certain frequencies more clearly, and things would stand out more like good hearing, more like regular hearing, as opposed to something that's damaged. Yeah. And until we can actually regenerate hair cells in the ear and actually get the ears hearing again, these cochlear implants are one of the next best solutions for solving hearing loss. Do you want to talk about dreams? I can go quickly into it. I was going to see if I had time for it, but there's this story out of MIT that I find really fascinating. The researchers in MIT have developed a device. They're calling it the Dormio device, and it's for tracking sleep. And they took the Dormio device, and it's a device that sits on your hand, and it tracks electrical impulses of your brain in order to be able to track the stages of sleep that you're in. The researchers who developed this at MIT, they were able to take this information and connect it up to a system to manipulate your dreams. So when you get into the very first earliest stages of sleep, the onset of sleep, which they call the hypnagogic state, they use a script that is, it's connected to an app in your phone, and your phone will, through the device, be able to start the program. It figures out what stage of sleep you're in. If you're in the hypnagogic state, it will then start the script that says, are you asleep? And then you can answer the question. And then it primes you with certain words that you want to be primed with to induce a more creative thought state. And so the researchers looked at people. They had a lot of people in a couple of different experiments where the different words that they used, they would tell people to think about a tree. And when people were thinking about the tree in this hypnagogic state as opposed to a waking state, they had much more creative answers, and it led to more creative directions in the way that they thought. And the researchers are trying to develop this now as a way to manipulate this dream state to assist people in how they in how they achieve creativity. Would you use this device?
What's really amazing is tonight Jams Tech, which was my old DJ name, came up. Magiconic State was the DJ group I was a part of. That we would go out and.
Blair.
That's really cool. So obviously. Implications for treating PTSD, like right off the bat, like as so many things are. What was that? There was a picture of like some sort of jackal jumping at a human in that study.
Yeah, I don't know if I would agree to crazy dreams on purpose.
So it's not that hard.
I prefer not to dream.
So this is okay.
But say you had a problem that you were working on, and many people use sleep as a way to work through problems. It's like, okay, I'm going to sleep on it, right? And somehow your brain works things out while you're sleeping. But what if you wanted to do that more consciously, tap into that state, but at the same time be more conscious of what occurred? And so, you could have the system prime you to work on camping trip, or whatever it happens. You're trying to solve a problem.
Like, this is what I'd want to know is, does doing this affect the restorative power of the sleep that you have?
Potentially, because but you're interrupting the progression of sleep stages. And what this does is it's kind of hypnotic in the sense that it keeps you in that first stage of sleep and doesn't allow you because it keeps the app keeps pinging you with prompts. You are asleep. Think of a tree. Did you think of a tree? As it keeps monitoring your brain state, and if you want to stay in that state to continue your creative process, it's going to keep you there and not let you progress to the later stages. So this might be something that you would use
for
during
naps.
a nap time. Yes. Or maybe it's just your weekend creative thinking time, and you want to try this instead.
I don't know. This is probably just coming from my personal state where I am right now, just really tired all the time. But I do not want to mess with my sleep processes right now. Like that.
Right now.
That seems
so. My question is, how different is this? This is a perfect example because this happened just a couple days ago. I fell asleep to at the beginning of a 2.5 hour interview with Sammy the Bull Gravano. And in my dream, as I fell asleep, he's still there talking. And I don't think it's even like, some of it is on script from what he's talking about, and I think some of the conversations we're having have nothing to do, but it's all in his voice for the rest of and the thing ends. I'm sure I was asleep for a long time. I was having this dream right when I woke up. Many hours later, I was still like, me and Sammy are cruising around in my old Thunderbird car for some reason. talking about like the old neighborhood. He was talking about this restaurant over here. This thing happened over here. He's like, but it was like, how different is this from just having audio prompts and maybe I'm because I'm kind of a lucid dreamer. Like the outside kind of filters in anyway, and I remember dreams. I don't know if that is part of it. Maybe I'm stuck. Maybe I don't sleep past the first stage of sleep. I don't know. Now I want to go do a dream study.
Or it's possible that because you did that while you were listening that one time, maybe that kept you in that state, that particular dream state, and it kept your brain active as opposed to letting you go into deeper stages of sleep.
I don't know, maybe. Fada, no, actually the thing about Sammy is that he never talked back in the day. This is the first interview he did in like 25 years. The man has never spoken. That was the thing about Sammy. He didn't believe in speaking. He got stuck with Gotti, who was a constant talker. Anyway, he said this guy did 22 and a half years in prison. He said they said, what was the worst prison you ever went to? So actually, it wasn't a bad prison. It was the 11 months I was locked up with Gotti, John Gotti, where he never stopped talking and complaining about being in jail, having been a gangster his whole life. 11 months, and the guy never stopped complaining. That was the worst. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm way off subject.
And talking. At
least that's what he said in my dream. I don't know. I should go back and watch the interview.
Yeah. But I find this a fascinating device with fascinating potential. Like you bring up PTSD and being able to delve into aspects of your creativity and your psyche. But I wonder how deep it goes. We know that hypnosis people try to use to program themselves to do things like stop smoking or other. Is there the potential for personal programming using this hypnagogic state as well? Just a thought.
Yeah, and the dream I think of this, would be to do something along the lines of what we see from the Matrix movie. Where it's like, I don't know how to fly a helicopter. Download how to fly this helicopter. Okay, what model is it?
What can you learn? What can you learn? Exactly.
That whole like putting the textbook under the pillow and osmosis, putting the information into your head. It's like we're getting closer. It's a great idea. We spend all this time sleeping. Why not learn the whole time? It'd be fantastic. And that's also great if you don't know where it came from. Car broke down. Oh, this engine, crazy thing. I got to take it to the mechanic. Oh, wait, I actually know how to fix this.
Yeah.
Right? Like you just I must have, I had the mechanic show on in my head the other night when I was dreaming. I've got it all in there.
So I was going to move on to your stories in this show, Justin, but you've got me concerned with your talking.
No. Don't be concerned. I'm going to drop. Okay, I'll just do one of the two stories. So we don't go
you
too
can
far
do
over
two. Time. That's fine.
No. So
all right. This is This Week in Science. Hey, Justin, you have any stories?
I have a couple. There's a disease called, I don't know if anybody out there, I think Blair, you're probably too young, called smallpox. It was knocked out in 1980. Officially, like there's no more smallpox. It's like gone. But it was thought to have been around since the 17th century. There's a study by an international team of researchers from the University of Copenhagen and the University of Cambridge that show that Vikings also suffered from smallpox. And so the Viking age was a lot longer ago than 17th century. They had researchers have studied and analyzed DNA of just 13 individuals from Northern Europe who were infected with smallpox. The samples are 1,000 years older, which puts it back to around year 600 of the previous oldest samples known to have been infected based on ancient DNA. And they thus push the timeline for smallpox back further in time. This is quotey voice of evolutionary geneticist who specializes in ancient genomes, Professor Eske Willerslev, Global Institute, University of Copenhagen, and person I have likely quotey voiced more than anybody else on this show. Actually seems to come up a lot in my segment. He says, we show that not only was it endemic in Europe, but it was actually quite widespread in Northern Europe already at the year 600. That means the disease was almost certainly far more established and at a much earlier age than previously thought. Researchers have also discovered that the virus circulating around the Viking Age, those viruses were distinct from their modern counterparts. So they're different enough. Not the direct ancestral to the viruses that caused the last big outbreak. This is all, by the way, smallpox killed more people, more humans than any other virus or bacteria infection, or well, maybe not infection, but any other virus that ever struck the planet. Again, they share a common ancestor, but they also have unique features that differentiate them from the ones circulating later on in history. It turns out that the viruses we have found were some of these very, very early and different versions of the devastating pathogens known from the 20th century. This is the first time we can trace these early smallpox viruses and compare their genomes and mutations to see how the disease evolved over time. Yeah, so that's pretty wild. And the virus is also called pox virus. It's sometimes called monkeypox because I guess monkeys were able to have high loads of this virus and then spread it. There's some written record, which this is sort of helping match up to, that there's possible smallpox infections dating back at least 3,000 years. So we haven't found any genetic evidence of this, but there's some written record that sounds very much like smallpox. But yeah, in 1980, the World Health Organization declared it gone.
So I just looked it up, and it looks like around 500 million people died from smallpox. So as of today, COVID beat it. So that's, yep.
Wait, no, it hasn't.
What?
No, not even
cases.
Close. No.
Global death?
No, just 5 million cases.
Oh, 500. Yeah, I missed some decimal points.
Yeah. No, it's fine. That's actually much higher.
No, you're
actually,
right.
that's much
So
higher.
so I was thinking 500,000. This is 500 million. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's actually much higher than the number that I had heard. I thought, but wow, yeah. So we managed to eradicate that one, but apparently it took us 3,000 years. Let's step it up a notch. Come on, people. We can do this faster, better, quicker. We have the technology now on our side. We have science. Let's do this quick.
Yeah, but isn't it? It is interesting, though, that they found, because of looking at the Viking samples everywhere, that they found something that was different. That it was, I mean, that genetically.
Yeah, so there's been multiple versions
Yeah.
of this. It could be, this is a distinct ancestor to the one that hit in the 20th century, but now we can sort of track how these changes and how this pox virus has been in population over time. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, and hopefully, knowing that it's popped up before, we can prevent it from popping up again. Smallpox
Well, we
whack-a-mole.
have. We've knocked it out. Vaccines. There's still no cure, by the way, but we have vaccines that prevent people from getting it, and we applied those worldwide efficiently enough to knock it out. I think we did that with funding and science, not with magic thinking. So
It's true.
well done, people of the. And this is also something that comes up every once in a while. The older generations, probably the greatest, but the generations that have passed and aren't really the vocal present one today, dealt with multiple types of, we're talking Spanish flu, polio, smallpox.
Oh,
They
so
had
many things.
so many of these that the funding and the importance and the emphasis on disease control was great. And they did such a good job that I think the current generation that hasn't really dealt with it a whole lot outside of AIDS has not come to grips with how important it is to fund things like World Health Organization, to have global monitoring, and to be funding science to continually prepare for the next outbreak. It's the reason the CDC even exists, is because of these things. So it stinks to have to learn such a painful lesson all over again when we had set our country up at one point to be prepared. Anyway, There's a research from Washington University School of Medicine, St. Louis, and the International Center for Diarrheal Disease Research, looking at malnourished children in Bangladesh. I think this is a Bill and Melinda Gates funded study, or at least one of them is. What's really interesting is they looked at they looked at blood samples from, I think it's 80 children who were malnourished and showing stunted growth, and they identified 14 bacteria that were present in 80% of the malnourished stunted children. They were highly correlated, these bacteria, with proteins that cause pro-inflammatory state and the stunting. The inflammatory markers also could be measured in their blood. So they took these 14 bacterial strains and they put them in mice, and then they had a control group. And sure enough, the mice, even though they were on the same diets, those with the 14 bacteria had the stunted growth. Which I guess important about this study is that aside from malnutrition, there are other factors that just the nutrients themselves that you're getting aren't the whole story. This bacterial invasion seemed to be making it harder for them to uptake nutrients, which accelerated that stunting. So perhaps a healthy diet provides a diversity of bacteria that outcompetes these. It's kind of unclear, how this result comes about. It's obviously linked to the malnutrition, but they said, when they gave it to the mice, these 14 strains still had the effect of stunting growth. So it could be that a healthy, well-fed microbiome could still fend off the invasion of these bacteria, but food alone isn't the only thing you need to combat in people who are malnourished. You may also, if you're restoring nourishment to somebody who has been malnourished, may also need to do a microbiome check to see if these strains are present, and if so, you might have to do an antibiotic treatment and then rebuild as you're. So it's just another layer onto the suffering of really poor people, in this case, children in Bangladesh.
Yeah, and it makes me think about like the starvation syndrome, where when somebody has been malnourished and hasn't had food for a really long time, you can try to give food back, but sometimes, and you have to start with just water, and then you go to chicken broth, and then it's just this slow returning of nutrients to the body, and sometimes the body will not accept that at all and will completely shut down. And you'd think, I'm feeding the body. Why isn't it working? And maybe it has to do with the bacterial population in the gut, that because it's shifted so far to a particular new population dynamic, that it's completely blocking nutrients passing through. Maybe it's blocking.
Okay, so that's
that.
Exactly. You're exactly right. So this is senior author Jeffrey I. Gordon. It says much of the body's nutrient absorption takes place in the small intestines. The small intestines is lined with finger-like projections called villi, which increase the absorptive surface area of the gut. In environmental enteric and dysfunction, these villi are damaged and collapse, causing inflammation in the wall of the gut and reducing the ability to absorb nutrients. So you're already starving, and now it's getting worse, right? Now you can't even if you get it hold of food, it's not going to have its full effect. This disorder has been very difficult to diagnose, and its cause is enigmatic as it is as its relationship to many manifestations of malnutrition, including short stature and stunting. Our study was designed to address these questions. The results has helped us to decipher disease mechanisms and also provide a rationale for developing new therapies that target the small intestinal microbiome. So exactly right, Kiki. They found some of the mechanics of that what you were just explaining.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And I mean, right now we are seeing so much more malnutrition. There's evidence that because there's food shortages in the pipeline because of COVID-19, and so there's going to be more malnutrition and undernutrition than we have seen in recent years. It's going to grow for a while. And so this is the kind of thing that can potentially help, aside from we need to fix the food pipeline. But this is This Week in Science, everybody. You're here with us. Thank you for joining us for this episode. If you want to help TWIS grow, get a friend to subscribe today. Oh, hey, but you know what time it is right now? I think it's...
What time is it?
It's time for Blair's Animal Corner.
With Blair?
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's Animal Corner.
What you got, Blair?
I have thumbs or mosquitoes. Pick one.
Thumbs.
Oh, they're
Thumbs.
not
I
in
don't
the
like
same
mosquitoes.
story.
I
Thumbs.
don't like
They're not
mosquitoes.
the
I'm
same story.
recording
Thumbs,
at
thumbs,
Lions.
thumbs.
Thumbs.
So thumbs. You need thumbs in order to do most things humans do, but that by itself is not enough. You need dexterity. So if you think about when you were little trying to learn how to use those safety scissors, it was not so easy. And that is the study of this study from Department of Anthropology at University of Zurich, looking at 36 different primate species over a period of more than 7 years to try to answer the question of when primates develop their dexterity and who develops it sooner and more intensely. So for humans, babies, it's around 5 months before they can grip something, and eating with a fork or a knife or tying shoelaces usually takes about 5 to 6 years old before they can do that. And by comparison, by that age, other primates are already having offspring of their own. So our development is very different from other primates, and that includes our dexterity. So what they found was that all species learned their respective manual skills in the same order. So the timeline might be different, but they learned the same kind of progression of dexterity abilities. The neural development follows an extremely rigid pattern, even in primate species that differ greatly in other respects. And something very important in relation to all this was the size of their brain. Large brain species such as macaques, gorillas, or chimpanzees were able to solve more complex tasks using their hands than primates with smaller brains such as lemurs or marmosets. And a big brain, as far as they can tell, equals greater dexterity. But where do humans fall in with that? Because our young humans can barely hold anything. They try to grab at their foot and miss, right? So in species with large brains like humans, they think it actually takes us much longer to learn even the simplest hand and finger movements, not because we are learning more complex skills, but mainly because we don't begin learning them until later. Basically, we're just less well developed at birth. So we know that. That's not a surprise. So we're just starting way further behind from everyone else, all the other primates. But the progression is the same, and our ability to grasp things is actually quite developed compared to other primates, and they think that has to do with our big brain. Only mammals that live a long time have enough time to learn to develop what you can use a large brain for, such as complex fine motor skills, and that leads to, of course, the ability to use tools. So grabbing things is important, manipulating things is even more important, and that is a very strict progression, and it requires a big brain.
I got my brain. So I wonder, I wonder if the same relationship holds for birds and their beaks. So birds that are more dexterous with their beaks in the things that they manipulate and they do in their environment, I wonder if their brains are bigger.
What about elephant trunks? Do they have the
Yeah.
same progression?
Yeah.
I was going to say elephants are terrible with their hands. They don't mean. Although actually, just as I said that, I think I sent maybe both of you this footage I had of an elephant manipulating a ball with its. Oh, I guess it was with its trunk. It was outside of its enclosure, and it kept like moving it with its trunk to get it over. Very dexterous, like definitely like using it like a hand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely.
The degrees of freedom in
Yeah.
movement for the elephant trunk it's wild. I mean, it's up there. Like we have all these bones that interdigitate and allow us to move in multiple, I guess, X, Y, Z planes, right? The trunk, it has no bones, but it is flexible. That's all muscle control. Want to talk about mosquitoes?
I do. So mosquitoes, us here on TWIS, not large fans of mosquitoes. No. Although we have learned they're pollinators, so we have to give them a little bit.
Got them in.
You have to give them a little bit of slack, but in the most part, pretty frustrated with mosquitoes for just generally killing people and spreading disease. Not great. Mosquitoes, come on. Not cool. But it turns out there's about 3,500 mosquito species in the world, and only a few actually bite humans. So it's important to remember there's lots of mosquitoes
so we could
out
just
there.
get rid of those ones.
Sure. Yeah. But in order to do that, you have to know why those 3 bite humans and the others do not. Because if you remove those, would other mosquitoes simply move into those niches and start biting humans? This is the question. So in this study, they wanted to figure out exactly what kind of cooked up, what created a human biting mosquito. And so they were able to trap a bunch of mosquitoes from outdoor sites in 27 different locations across sub-Saharan Africa, because as far as we can tell, that's where most mosquitoes came from. They came from Africa. And so back in the lab, they tested the preferences of those mosquito populations for the scent of people versus other animals, including guinea pigs and quail. And then they cross-reference that with a bunch of different factors about these different types of mosquitoes. So first, they show that mosquitoes living in dense urban cities were attracted to people more than those from rural or wild places. So now you have to ask, and I know what you're going to say, Justin, but is this a chicken or egg scenario? Do we not know?
Egg came first.
Right, but in this case, did the human biting mosquito come first, or did the urban area come first? Right? So is the mosquito just reacting to the fact there's lots of humans around, or does the mosquito prefer humans and go to where the humans are? We don't know.
See, I would assume it's just because we don't have fur. We're an easy target. We're like thin-skinned fleshiness, just easier to bite.
So this is saying that mosquitoes do not inherently go to humans just because they're around. The ones that are in urban areas show a kind of preference for humans. But this only applied to especially dense modern cities. And so likely that's not the original reason that mosquitoes started biting humans. The second and probably more important discovery was that mosquitoes living in places with longer and hotter dry seasons showed a strong preference for humans versus animal scent. So their immediate habitat didn't have much of an effect, but the greater climate of their space did.
Yeah.
So the regions with dense human populations and the ones that had these dry, hot patterns were more likely to bite humans.
So you're saying the answer is if we got rid of all the local mosquitoes, the mosquitoes that moved in went, oh, look at this long, hot, dry climate. I'm going to bite humans.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
And that's partially because our blood is full of water.
Oh, that makes sense. But so, but they tune into the human scent. They're not tuning into, but they tune into carbon dioxide and other aspects of our scent. But the reason that they love us is because they need water.
Yeah, and we are an especially watery animal because we're really good at keeping ourselves hydrated. So, as opposed to other animals that can go a very long time without water, especially ones that live in dry areas, they probably don't have as much water to give to the mosquito if they were bitten. But so, looking at this information, knowing that it has to do with climate and population, looking forward, how does what we're looking at with climate change and urban growth, how is that likely to shape mosquito behavior in the future? In a bad way is the answer. So rapid urbanization could push more mosquitoes to bite humans. And drier, hotter climate that is more widespread is more likely to push mosquitoes to bite humans. But here's one of the other things they looked at from the study. They found that there were genes concentrated in a few key parts of their genome that drove the evolutionary shift in the mosquitoes for their biting preferences. So even though we see what shaped this behavior, the researchers now have maybe found some genes that could impact that behavior. So that could help. But based on the external factors that create a biting mosquito, quote unquote, not looking great.
Well, if we want to move away from all those hot, dry places to the cooler, wetter places,
Right.
as water moves around the planet.
But if everybody does that, then it becomes more urban and densely populated, and that also brings mosquitoes. So this is a good reminder that climate change and human health are related, which we talk about all the time. But since mosquitoes are this massive vector for disease, and we know that climate change can impact mosquitoes' proclivity to bite humans, this is a good reminder that climate change and human health are very closely linked. And if we can curb climate change, that could help prevent the spread of disease via mosquito.
Wondering what 100 acres of northern Arctic Canada goes for these days.
Right now,
That
there
might
are
be.
many mosquitoes there, probably. But
No, it's so cold. They don't like the cold, do they?
in the spring and summer, it warms up a bit. Everything starts melting. It gets very boggish, right? Yeah.
Oh, no, there's no escape.
It's hard to get away from the mosquitoes. Wherever we run, they follow the mosquitoes.
Somebody in the chat room, I know we're moving into the question section, and I don't want to hijack it, but someone asked a really good question, which is, can mosquitoes pass COVID-19? And I thought that they can't because coronaviruses are so big.
Yeah, from what I was aware, mosquitoes do not transmit coronavirus.
Yeah, this was asked before. I think we went to mosquito.org or something. Got the answer. But they might be biased.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, yes, what does it say? I think we did answer this, but coronavirus cannot be transmitted through mosquito bites. Here we go. CDC, World Health Organization, answers this question. There's a study. They looked at Aedes aegypti, albopictus, Culex quinifasciatus, and they demonstrated that SARS-CoV-2 virus is unable to replicate in the mosquitoes and then therefore cannot be transmitted to people, even in the unlikely event that a mosquito fed on a viremic host.
There you go. West Nile, they can carry that. That's awful. They can carry a virus and transmit it, just not that one.
Just not that one. We lucked out on this one issue. Yes. All right, moving into the questions segment. We do love questions. This week, Ed Dyer asks, what are the best steps that can be taken to get young, school-aged girls, especially in minorities, interested in pursuing science as a career? Also, to provide the support they need to do so. Any
There's a lot.
thoughts? There's a lot. Yeah. My first the first thing that jumps to my head is that this is something that people have been working on for a very long time, and we are seeing more and more young women in minorities pursuing careers in science. And one of the biggest things that has helped is representation.
Representation begets interest.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So people who are they are stepping up as role models and getting in front of people. I know there's a If Then Ambassadors program that's working currently. They have 100 or so women from the STEM backgrounds who are being trained to communicate with middle school aged girls, and they've been given all sorts of PR training, and the If Then campaign is putting them in places where they can have more impact, which I think is there are people who are putting money into helping this take root even more deeply in our society. But go ahead, Blair.
Yeah, it's just the same thing that kind of prevents a lot of people from joining the sciences, also prevents people from going into nonprofits. And this is something that we talk a lot about in my work as well. And that is anything that is a pay-to-play structure. So anything that requires internships, which is basically free labor, anything where you need very expensive extra schooling to join. These are huge barriers. And so there's a whole conversation in my field right now where we're discussing trying to prevent us from being the exact same sort of person all the time running these organizations and the programs, is to kind of remove those expectations. Because often if you have fields that require internships or other sort of privilege-based watermarks in order to enter, that prevents people from joining who need a paying job or who can't live with their parents forever.
Right.
So that is a huge piece of making sure that we can reach everybody in the sciences and in a lot of careers that have often been filled with people who have extra money or resources.
So paid internships, and maybe zero tuition which is or grants or however you want to facilitate for the science. If America wants to be a leader in the scientific field, we need scientists. It's not even math. And we should be reaching out to all of our populations of students to encourage them to be part of it. But you're absolutely right. I think that a program of paid internships, which I got one. I had basically, it was a paid internship summer job in high school at the Orthopedic Research Lab at UC Davis under Professor Neil Sharkey. And that got me interested in science in a way that no class I'd ever taken ever could.
And it was those kinds of experiences that make such a huge difference.
Yeah, and I know the university wasn't paying for this.
Yeah. In general, we need better infrastructure for women in sciences. I know we've talked about this on the show before, but there's a lot of trouble if you want to start a family and you're in academia, that you if you're a woman, you run the risk of completely losing all tenure, all space, all research grip. So that's a whole nother thing too, is that just the structure itself is not necessarily forgiving to biologically what it means to be a woman.
So one thing I would just add to that is I think you could have inserted any other career choice industry with academia. And with that,
it's a lot I would say it's more so than other careers. Because
you think so more so than a law firm, more so than being a doctor with residency, more so than I don't know. I think it affects everything, and I think that there should be some,
but academia it affects especially. There is an expectation that you do not abandon your lab, quote unquote. It's very different.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
pipeline
just
and
more family support, since
and it just
females
to,
are the ones who have to pop out the baby.
and generally, if there is, support for any parent, support for, to create a pipeline and a system that is supportive of parents, so that it's not something to do with one sex over the other, right? That it is that if the husband wants, or the, whichever parent wants to make the choice to stay home, if they want to, they can, or there is time allowed to do that. But right now we have a very, it is a patriarchal system. It's set up for men to run labs, and that's just the way the system has been set up. That's who set the system up. So if we can refurbish the system and switch it around, create a pipeline that is supportive to mothers, to fathers, to
The last lab I worked
women
at was
in
run by a
general,
woman. It was the director of the site was a woman. So it is taking place. It's not universal. But here's the.
Of course, but there are different levels of personal drive and other things that lead into this. Absolutely, there's individual issues, but there are systemic issues that need to be changed.
And I will tell you what I think is probably the biggest one, and then we'll move on. Housing price control on housing. Decommoditize it. The only way you could have like somebody stay home and raise the children, whether it's the man, which I would love to do, or the one, is to have it be not need two incomes just to pay a mortgage or the rent. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
If you raise the minimum wage, rents go up. That's a meaningless thing to do. Minimum wage is meaningless without rent control, housing control. Decommoditize it. That's the solution to most of our economic problems as a nation. Is just the price of housing. It's most of the problems right there. You can knock them out.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's one of the big ones.
Yeah. So finding a way for science to not be something that is a privilege or leisure to join, I think, is really what this all comes down to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still don't. I think that's getting there close. I think that though. It always does come down to funding, though. I mean, if you really do create a wide, huge input of money into scholarships from the federal government or from your state governments for kids to go to secondary school and pursue college, or to go for a bachelor's at least. Like, if you want to get a bachelor's in art history, you got to pay. I'm sorry, there's too many people in that field already, and we're not using any of them. Maybe a couple good ones, but mostly no. That's a personal knowledge thing that's nice to have at a dinner. Sorry, art history. It's study art. Go make art. Don't study the history. Anyway, but if you want to do a science, we're going to pay for it because we need you in our society. We need to craft that future. We should be doing that. The idea that every once in a while we look at like how bad the United States is doing in math and science and our education system against the rest of the world. Those countries are paying for it. Those countries are not saddling them with $200,000 in debt to get a bachelor's degree in science. They are
investing in their technological future.
They're investing in their own future because they know all of those brainy people who have the right education will achieve amazing things for them. It's a failing on our country, but it's only one of what's becoming just too many. It's just too many.
We need more diverse brains in science. That's what we need. We've come to the end of the show, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Ed, for your question. Really appreciate it. If any of you would like, if you would like to send us a question, do you have a question you want us to answer, discuss? You can send me an email, Kirsten@thisweekinscience.com. You can also leave us a message on our Facebook page, This Week in Science. Yeah, we love the questions. Keep them coming. Right now, I want to do shout outs to the friends of the show, people who help support us and keep us moving. Fada, thank you so much for your help with social media and show notes. Gord, thank you for manning the chat room. Identity4, thank you for doing the recording every week of the audio. And I'd like to thank our Patreon sponsors and the Burroughs Welcome Fund for their generous support. Thank you to Eric Combs, Flying Out, Guillaume, John Lee, Ben Rothig, Ali Coffin, Maddie Perrin, Gaurav Sharma, Taylor P.S., Josiah Zahner, Mike Shoemaker, Sarah Forfar, Donald Mundis, Rodney Lewis, Stephen Alberon, John Ratnaswamy, Dave Friedel, Daryl Myshak, Stu Pollock, Andrew Swanson, Corinne Benton, Sky Luke, Paul Runovich, Ben Bignell, Kevin Reardon, Noodles Jack, Sarah Chavez, Paul, Jason Olds, Brian Carrington, Matt Bass, Joshua Fury, Sean and Nina, Sue Doster, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Jean Tellier, Steve Leisman, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Richard, Brendan Minish, Melazond, thank you, Johnny Gridley, Richard Porter, Christopher Dreyer, Mark Mazzaros, Artyom, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Robert, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Matt Sutter, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Mountain Sloth, Jim Drapeau, Alex Wilson, Dave Neighbor, Kosti Ranke, Matthew Litwin, Eric Knapp, E.O., Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Steve DeBell, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul Disney, Patrick Pecoraro, Gary S., Ed Dyer, Tony Steele, Ulysses Adkins, Brian Condren, and Jason Roberts. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. If you are interested in supporting us on Patreon, you can find information by clicking the Patreon link at twist.org or just go directly to patreon.com/thisweekinscience. On next week's show,
We will be back on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific time, broadcasting live from our YouTube, Facebook channels, and as well as from twist.org / I'm not really sure, live.
Hey, do you want to listen to us as a podcast? Just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, give us a thumbs up. Get your friends to subscribe, too.
For more information on anything you heard here today, show notes and links to stories will be available on our website, www.twist.org. And you can also sign up for our newsletter, which apparently we just started.
Hey, use those dexterous thumbs to contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at TWIS or me, Blair at blairbaz@twist.org. Just be sure to put TWIS in the subject line so your email does not get spam filtered into oblivion.
You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIScience, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes through tonight, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views. But I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. 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 And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. 'Cause it's This Week
week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. So how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This week in science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say. And if you've learned anything from the words that we've said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's this week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in 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 science.
It's the end of another show. It's the after show. It's the after show. It's the after show. It's the end of another show. It's the after show. My camera's crooked again. I need to get a little level bubble that I put on top of my camera to make it not crooked. I didn't want to poke it down during the show, though. We've come to the end of a show. Yeah. Shoe Brew, thanks for joining last week on Science Island. Everyone who joined on Science Island, thank you for joining. Really appreciate that. Oh, the TWIS theme song is not on SoundCloud anymore. I did not put it on SoundCloud, so probably the musician either took it down or... yeah, I don't know. What? MySpace? What? I don't understand the MySpace angle. I'm confused. I'm old. I don't get references.
I feel like you're the right age for
Sorry.
MySpace.
I do. I know.
The youngins don't know what that is.
Oh, I had a MySpace.
Yeah, you better believe it.
I had a MySpace.
So did I.
I put all sorts of things on my MySpace, and then
I had a background on my page. I had a song that played when you went to my page.
I was like, Tom's my friend.
Yeah.
Right, Tom's my friend. He's my friend. He's in my space, and yeah. Yeah.
I am tired.
Oh, you're tired. Yeah, there's a few full brains. Shoe Brew says. Brain is full. Oh, yeah. And the, for those of you, I'll just remind you, Science Island is there. For those of you who have the link to hang out. I mean, you could even be there while you're listening to TWIS, talking to each other. But the chat room I like because then I can see it, because I'm not going to be able to listen to High Fidelity and do the show and be able to keep up with everything. So just stay in the chat room. Don't go over there unless you have private things to talk about. I don't know. But thanks for joining at High Fidelity last week. We'll do another one of those. I'd like to do kind of regular High Fidelity Science Island meetups. Hello, Test Tickle in Alaska. Over on YouTube. That's a lot of daylight. 18 hours and 20 minutes of daylight. Yes? It's a lot. Years ago, people used to take photos at angles to make themselves look better. What do you mean years ago?
I do that now.
People do that now. If I'm gonna... I always have the camera up, and I'm going to use my better side and have the chin up, you know. I'll be like, stinking. And
No, you can't go from below. You got to go from above. And if you
it's
tilt a
all
little,
about the
it's-
angles, Thunder Beaver. Yes. E-World. Oh, Shubrew, you're going way back. That's nice. Yeah, I heard MySpace is kind of still around. It became a more of a music sharing site or something.
I thought it was gone. Okay, there's a way to figure this out.
I won't beat anybody up, Thunder Beaver. I will not, I promise. Well, maybe not. Never mind. I
MySpace.com
can't
is a
promise that.
thing still.
It is a thing, yes. It's a thing. It's not, but it's not a thing like it used to be. It's not like Facebook.
Do I still have an account?
Sometimes you're like, wait a minute, is it still in there? Now everyone check your MySpace. Are you still on MySpace? Do I have an account? Whoa, this is not the MySpace that I remember.
Yeah.
This is like news. Millie Bobby Brown to
Yeah, I
start
saw
in the
that.
new Netflix film, The Girls I've Been.
Yeah, I don't know my password.
I don't think I'll be able to log in.
Yeah,
I
I don't
don't
want to
think-
retrieve my password. I
They
don't
wouldn't.
think it's worth
Would
it.
they have? Would they have? Would they have saved
My
the
MySpace might
old
still be up.
accounts? Well, that's what I'm wondering. Would they have saved the old accounts, or so that they could have more accounts on their list of like, look at how many people we have as members, or would they have cleansed their records and started fresh when the new corporate people came in? I wonder. I don't know.
Well, so I searched my name and MySpace, and I don't see it.
Yeah, Tom is not there anymore, Fada. There's no Tom. Tom is not a big part of MySpace anymore. Gorov, yes, I do. And it's like every other month or so now, I do the AAAS book interview section for their podcast, which is fun. So yeah, you will hear my voice on the AAAS podcast occasionally, talking to somebody about their book. This month,
So,
I'm interviewing
I-
Carl T. Bergstrom about his book, Calling Bullshit. And we got to say bullshit a lot because that's the title of his book and it's the subject of his book. And yes,
Well
so it's
done.
like, I'm like, and then I had to ask the producers. I was like, so for the podcast, is it okay if we're going to say this word? Is that okay? Like, what do I do? And so now I have to do an introduction for my section of the podcast that warns people that it's going to have mild profanity.
Oh, jeez.
But I was thinking it would be funny to warn people that this section of the podcast is going to be full of fecal excrement from male bovines.
Good.
I was thinking that would be kind of fun, but I don't think they want me to do that. The thing about, yes, Gary Lubert in the YouTube chat, you say, or BS, right? I could say BS, but in the book, they never use that shortening. They never use BS. It's always the full word. And so, yeah, I have to count how many times that word is in the book. I think that's important. It's one of the things like that are very important to me. Yeah. Talking about talking behind one's back. What were you going to say about BS, Justin?
oh, was I?
Were
I
you?
was
You were going to talk about something else. MySpace, maybe? Do you still have a MySpace account? You still?
I was
friends with Tom?
also playing along, trying to see if I do. The problem is, you look up the name Justin Jackson, and like 10,000 are coming up, and so
Jeez,
like
yeah.
I don't have time to scroll through and find me.
But if it's MySpace,
Although, Although I think it was MySpace that I tried to do, like, befriend every Justin Jackson that existed. Out of the 10,000, I got like maybe I had a crew of like 80 Justin Jacksons at one point that were my friends. So I should, if I there maybe there's some numbers. If I find a Justin Jackson and look at their friends, I might still be there.
I'm trying. I can't type today.
But my computer doesn't want to load. Joe Jackson's Jump and Jive. That's a good jump. That's the Joe Jackson. That's not Justin Jackson. It's a great album, though. It's a great album. What's the use of getting sober when you got to get drunk again? I love my whiskey. I love my gin. Every time you see me, I'm in my sin.
I'm just gonna believe that my account is no longer there.
Yeah. It doesn't look like it.
There are so many Justin Jacksons. But it's not loading. I'm trying to go by... Oh, this is by albums. There's a bunch of us.
Are you
who have
on...
recorded.
Did you search on MySpace? Is that what you did?
I tried to, yeah. It's still... There's too many Justin Jacksons, though. It's just still loading. It'll load forever. Artists, albums? Yeah, it's very music oriented. Oh, yeah, I want to go into the people section. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah, no results. There you go. No results for Blair Bazdrich.
Actually, the numbers have gone down, though. There's only 2,229 Justin Jacksons on MySpace. Used to be a lot more of us. By the way, Justin Jacksons are very diverse. We are a diverse group of people.
Apparently,
and a few too many of us are taking that that topless selfie in the mirror where you can see the model of the phone. There's just a few too many of those. We're not a very sophisticated crew, I have to say.
Don't do that. Just don't take pictures of yourself without a shirt in front of a mirror with your phone. Just don't do it.
But I think that's from. I mean, I think
advice right now.
I'm guessing though that might be a photo that is from before there was like the reversible camera thing. Like that might be a really old MySpace page because it even looks a little like the picture
Before
isn't
they put
very
cameras
crisp.
on both sides of the phone. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. Because the picture is not even very crisp or high resolution or what have you. Yeah, I don't think I exist here. That's too bad.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Who needs MySpace? It's fine.
Well, when was MySpace? What year are we talking?
I made mine MySpace in 2005.
I don't even remember. 2005?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, mine might be horrible to find. It might have been like a dating profile. Like, hi, I like long walks in the park.
Actually, I know a married
Drinking
couple
heavily after
who
midnight.
have 4 children and are very happy together who met on MySpace.
So many Justin Jacksons.
Oh, founded in 2003.
According to Identity 4, Justin, your audio has been very loud lately.
Oh, yeah, that's probably true. It's just my voice.
Look, Thunder Beaver's MySpaces. Awesome.
Hey, you got is Thunder Beaver on? Did he ever send us a sample of his music?
Nope.
All right, Thunder Beaver.
He just gave us links to his old bands.
Okay, all right, we can check it out now.
Hot Rod, you search for your link in your bookmarks. Awesome. I would not have MySpace in my bookmarks anymore because I don't think the Chrome browser was a thing back then.
Mm-mm. I mean,
Testicle,
Google.
I think you are definitely
Google's
right
smart.
about that study. Have a good night, Fada.
Wait, what was his name?
Thank you. Testicle?
I'm 12 years old. I'm 12 years old, but that's hilarious. Yeah, I think he might be a twin. Yeah, it's very possible.
It's possible. Oh my
Thank you for
goodness.
that. That just got me the best laugh I've had all day.
It's deserved. That's good. Oh my God. Full of one-liners too. You just scroll up through the chat. Lots of one-liners here. Let's see. Has there been any research that proves that censorship of words help people grow into better human beings? No. There has not. Yeah, going back to that conversation. Nope. Orchid was January 2004. Oh, wow. A while ago.
I know I've never heard of
Brian
Orchid. This is the
Burwell.
first I've heard of it. But I was always
Oh.
slow to adapt to stuff. Like Kiki would be like, "Yeah, you need to create a social media account." I'm like, "What's that?" It's like, see, at the point, I think you already had like 10,000 Facebook followers and 20,000, 100,000 Twitter followers, and I'm like, "What's a social media account?" Like, I didn't like understand.
What is the social medias?
It's a place where you can go to talk to people. I used to get an argument. We used to have a chat room on the TWIS.org website. Do you remember that? Or thisweekinscience.com
We had
website,
a
whatever
forum. It wasn't a chat
forum.
room. We had a
Yeah,
forum.
it kind of turned into one.
Yeah.
Where I get into these wonderful arguments. And then I found like there was this other platform and I got really into it for a while and then I just stopped. I stopped checking social media.
Mhm.
Long time ago.
You know, it's probably a lot better for your mental health. And you don't waste as much time. Probably read more books.
No, I think I'm just lazy. Like, I think that's what it is. Like, when I get, like, I like to, like, every once in a while, something like tests my tickles, and I go in there and I have to post something on the Twitter usually. But then I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah. I'm on WhatsApp. I like WhatsApp, but I just use it for talking to friends. It's like when my friends
Don't know. I don't know why WhatsApp
conversations
didn't.
on WhatsApp.
I'm not sure why WhatsApp didn't become a thing. I use Viber.
Oh, I've
I
heard
used to
Viber's
use
really good.
Viber. I used to use Viber and WhatsApp when I lived abroad, but now you can call through WhatsApp. So I deleted Viber because
Oh no,
that was the
Viber
difference,
you can
right?
call. You
No,
can
but that
call.
was the difference. Is WhatsApp was for messaging and Viber was for calling. And
Ah.
so I would message everyone through WhatsApp and then call them on Viber. But now that WhatsApp also does calling, I deleted Viber.
Gotcha. So I didn't bother. So Viber you can call and you can video call and what's crazy is like Viber works like a FaceTime kind of a thing, even though I can't FaceTime from when I'm out in the rurals, when I'm out in the farmlands, right? I can't FaceTime because I'm not on Wi-Fi and it just won't let me for some reason. And I can't I can't do the live stream from the rural internet, but I can have like face-to-face video real timiness on Viber, no problem. It works with through phone internet or like just phone signal beautifully, where like all these other things like fail. And I don't know why, but it works.
It works. It works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Science. Yeah. You know,
Do we
there
ever
are a whole
need-
bunch of stories we didn't talk about tonight. Lithium in drinking water linked with lower
Ooh.
suicide rates.
Oh, jeez.
Everybody get
Oh.
more lithium.
All
Wind
right,
power,
so-
offshore wind powers paying money back to consumers soon in the UK. Dry eye
So
disease. Body
I
odor.
just-
I have a body odor story. So many stories.
Oh.
What?
I was just gonna say I found a Justin Jackson who did a selfie through the mirror, so you can see him holding up the phone,
Good.
taking a picture, who didn't take his shirt off. And actually, now I'm thinking like, well, we're gonna do that picture. Take your shirt off. Like,
Yeah.
no,
Who
like,
even
at that
are
point-
you?
yeah, what are you doing? He's not even smiling. He's like not smiling, but took the picture where you can see the phone. He's holding it up to the mirror, but didn't do it topless. Like, wait, okay, then now I'm even more confused.
Who are you even, Justin Jackson?
There's
Who
so
are
many of
you?
us. There's thousands of us. And like some of these look definitely like they are older photos that must be like fossilized accounts. And some of them are couples, and I can't help but wondering, like, are they together? Is there some weird like neither of them is like talked about, just checked MySpace in so long that they don't realize there's still a couple on MySpace from 20 years ago, or I guess it was 17 years ago. 16?
I
It's only
still have
2003, 4.
pictures. I mean, like, you know how on Facebook they'll tell you like memories and stuff, and I'll see pictures of people that I no longer am acquainted with, and it's because it's not my photo; it's somebody else's photo, so I
Yes.
can't get rid of it.
I can't.
like,
Why can't I
Every
get rid
year
of
I have
it?
to be like, oh god, that guy.
I would like to find, is there an app that will send you all your old tweets that you tweeted on a particular day? So it's kind of like a this day in history in your tweeting history. Because
Like what
used to have
Facebook kind of
that.
does?
There was something
Yeah,
called
but then I could
Time
look-
Hop that I had
Yeah, Time-
that
is that
did
what it is?
Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But I want to say maybe it died. I don't know.
Mm.
I definitely uninstalled it, but I don't remember why. But yeah, it did all three. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, because I think that would be fun to be like, oh, look what I said 4 years ago today. I predicted this would happen. You know, that kind of a thing, and I was right. I think it would be fun for Twitter. I don't care about Facebook that much.
Yeah.
They
Really?
already bring Facebook surfaces stuff already itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 This is the-
9:30 p.m. in Alaska. Oh, you're an hour behind still?
Still, catch up.
Catch up. Come on. That's right.
It's hustle time.
I like
Let's
my
go.
Adam.
Let's
I
go.
like my Adam shirt too. Thank you very much. Thank you very TikTok. I'm not a TikToker. I'm gonna
I
leave
haven't
the
done
Seems like
that.
a lot of
TikToking.
work.
That's part of it. I'm like, how do I find the time to do the more things? And I can't. So yeah, I'm leaving the TikTok to other people, even though, it's a thing, but everything is a thing. And
Everything's a
everything
thing.
takes time and effort and to do it right and to do it well. Yeah. Pick your poison.
Tess Tickle wants to know if TWIS has merch. I feel like they asked that just so that we would say their name again. Yes, go to twist.org and click on the Zazzle link, or go to zazzle.com/thisweekinscience, and you can see all of our merch.
Yes.
Tess Tickle, you're
Test.
welcome.
Test. Tickle.
Really have to feel that underscore.
Yes, Thunder Beaver. I had a story about body odor. Researchers had discovered and published a paper this last week about the production of body odor in humans. We know it's produced by bacteria. And so they figured out these are the bacteria, it's odor forming staphylococci that have a bacterial enzyme that chops thioalcohol precursors. Chop, chop, chop. It's like Ginzu steak knives for proteins. And when it chops them up, it leads to the production of these thioalcohols that make you stink. So what they suggest is by understanding how the bacteria work and how the enzyme works, this CT, cysteine thiol lyase, that they could use the form of the molecule, the structure of the molecule, to be able to create anti-odor formulations, deodorants that would specifically act on either that enzyme or the enzyme itself and stop it from acting. And so it would be less of a broad spectrum aluminum all over your underarm and more of this is a very specific thing that's just affecting this one enzyme kind of a treatment. Right. It could be better. Could be better. Some people don't worry about the deodorant. Some people do. Antiperspirant.
Always been true.
I still maintain the more you rely on antiperspirant, the worse you will smell. Because your body produces more, because it's like, oh no, I'm not sweating. Let me pump out more.
Right, more perspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've said this on the show before. I stopped wearing deodorant and I had a stinky couple of weeks. But then, way less. Like, I don't wear it now, normally, unless I know I'm going to be out in the heat or I do heavy activity. But
right.
I felt like it took time for my body to readjust. And then, very little sweat.
Yeah. But you do shower. You do bathe often. So
I do. I shower pretty much every day. But I also think, like, when do we tell people to start wearing it? It's like teenagers, stinky teenagers, which is when it's an overdrive, right? So, like, I feel like we could be overcorrecting at a time when the body's figuring out how much smell to make.
I think it's probably always in flux.
Yeah. But I can see how when you're going through puberty, your body's producing more than it will for the rest of its life. Definitely. But you could also see how your body's like trying to self-regulate and figure out how much this adult microbe spaceship needs. And if you're slathering on antiperspirant, then that could mess up with the whole process. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, especially because like sweating has to do with hormones. And we know also that like for some animals, at least, putting animals on birth control that messes with your hormones too early can mess with later processes. So like there's that whole thing.
But it doesn't. But sweating is also that is a temperature regulation response, and it's not just in your armpits, but the bacteria like to grow there and in your groin area specifically.
Right.
Apparently, these Staphylococcus bacteria who produce the odor, that's where they like to live. They're like, I will only live in your pits and your groin, and that is it. And so we sweat all over our body, but because it's not in these dark, enclosed spaces, they don't build up and grow as much. But it's controlled locally by cells in the skin also.
But isn't the smell also by and large controlled by hormones?
No, the smell. That's what this is saying. The smell is bacteria.
Yeah, hasn't that been a known thing? Like I thought that was already a well-known thing.
It's not hormones.
No, not at all.
But the hormones don't impact what bacteria live there at all?
Probably not. So
I don't know.
So I had a professor that like was adamant that the reason humans have pubic hair is to catch sweat because there are pheromones in it.
Yeah, I remember you've talked about that before.
Yeah.
But it's possible
probably
that there
more
is
likely.
Nobody's ever found pheromones before, though. They've looked.
Yeah, it's probably more likely that the reason that there's pubic hairs is because we spent a lot of time running around on the savannah butt naked and didn't want to sunburn in a couple places.
Mm-hmm.
Some places,
the other theory
is a little more awkward.
Is that it has to do with friction?
That is a theory.
Friction.
Friction.
I don't know this one. Okay. So, Anniversary
do we
Society.
need
Look, hang on. Here's
Welcome
the.
to TWIS Late Night.
So one of the things that you guys were discussing is body odor, and I've always wondered, like, how come like all animals don't reek to high hell like a human does? Is it because we interrupt a healthy
Animals stink.
external biome?
Yeah, define reek, because
There are some stinky animals out there.
yeah, I think
Is it just because we're sweaty? But then the thing is, the thing I would also point out is that okay, this is a little bit sensitive, so this is just between us. But have you ever been in close proximity with a very homeless person, and then the smell of that proximity could not leave you for a while? Yeah. Oh, is that you know like,
It's
you're
like in
being
your
silent.
nose.
Like, yeah, it hits you, and it's like it's hard to get. It's like, so that's not groin or armpit. The thing that is that causes the most emanation of scent from somebody who has not had access to proper bathing for a long time is feet. This is if you asked a homeless person of any article of clothing they would like to have replaced, it's socks. There was a couple of guys who actually they spent a year trying to be homeless, and they found that the one thing that just was like the constant wish above anything else was just new socks, because feet, you've got like a couple of days of feet before it's too much. You know, maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe you can go a week, but your feet are the first thing that really. So, and it kind of makes sense. Like, humans didn't really like wear shoes for that long, so it's sort of a new thing to keep them in these warm enclosed things. And it's also homeless people are having to walk a lot. But that's very much the part of the body that's putting out, and I don't think that's for an aphrodisiac reasons. But I think it might.
You're right. That probably is more related to the fact that you're using those feet and they're bare.
You're using them, but you're also wearing shoes. Like, I don't believe that foot stench occurs if you are going barefoot.
Yeah.
So there's things that we've done.
Ooh, Kiki threw something in the garbage.
I did. I'm trying.
Wait, what are you doing?
She threw something in the garbage. I heard the sound.
Oh. But yeah, like, but we've also modified how our body interacts with the environment to the point where, yeah, feet stink to high hell if you've worn the same pair of socks or shoes for weeks, or worn shoes without socks. My goodness, my children have had the smelliest feet in the world by refusing to wear socks, and then it gets this sludge, this foot toe jammy sludge in their shoe. It's really awful. And like, their feet will be the stinkiest feet in the world because they refuse to wear socks. Because you have to change socks all the time because your feet are constantly emanating this shedding and this sweating and this. So, but that's in a natural. It's in a natural situation we put feet in.
Oh God!
But nobody's calling that an aphrodisiac. And so I'm wondering, like, the same thing with underarm BO bacteria things. If we were running a little bit more free, letting the wind go under there, I don't think you hear about this as much. So yeah. All of our conversations around the biological reason for these things, when we've completely altered the environment in which our bodies exist, I think it's hard to just make a quick link backwards. I think it's very difficult to extract evolutionary human from 10,000 years ago, even that long in evolutionary human-y ape lineage, and to say that that's why we have this, that, or the other, because we've completely screwed with the system.
Apparently, you're like 6 decibels louder than everybody else, Justin.
That's always true. Testicle. Today, a man knocked on my door and asked for a small donation towards the local swimming pool. I gave him a glass of water.
Trying out your one-liners here in our chat. Hello.
But they're good ones. I haven't heard these ones. These are really good. Oh. What is that? What was that random? Who's this anniversary band? Test.
What?
Yeah. Never mind.
What?
It doesn't.
Yeah. Well, anyway, this body odor paper, I think it's open source. Open source? No. I'm using the wrong words. It's available.
Open source body odor. Available to anyone who walks by.
Yeah. On nature. Apocrine glands. Eccrine glands. Okay, eccrine glands are found in high density all over the body. They open directly onto the surface of the skin and are essential for thermoregulation. In contrast, apocrine glands open into hair follicles and typically occur in high density at specific body sites. The underarm, nipple, and external genitalia. Their exact function and physiological role in modern humans remain poorly understood. Axillary microbiota plays an important role in the generation of human body odor. Oh,
Sweaty
Staphylococcus,
nipples?
Cutibacterium, and Cornybacterium are the dominant genera. The cuties and the cornies. Yes, sweaty nipples, apparently. So axillary malodor is comprised of a mixture of volatile organic compounds with volatile fatty acids and thioalcohols being the primary component. The thioalcohols are the most pungent volatiles. And so that's what they were looking at, the enzyme involved.
Okay.
So now we know. The more you know.
Bum, bum, ba-dum. Who spent a childhood in front of the television?
Yeah, who was a latchkey kid for part of their childhood and watched television? That's right. All right, everyone. Is it time to go to bed?
It's time
Okay.
for me to go to bed, for
Or at
sure.
least, I don't know what everybody's going to do, but to end the show. Is it time? Yes.
All right, I have an idea. Say goodnight, Blair.
Good night, Blair. Say good night, Justin.
Good night, Justin.
Good
night,
Kiki.
Kiki.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for another wonderful show. Really appreciate all of you. Have a great week. Take care of yourselves. And we will be back next Wednesday. Bye.
Same twist time, same twist channel.